1. When I was 18, late 1990s, I had a silver AMC Spirit with powder blue interior. I didn't know shit about cars, but it was a sexy little oil dribbling thing. It had bald tires that would spin the car 360 if I didn't brake cautiously, but I loved it. Until it died unexpected and I had to have it towed to a shop a week before I was to leave the country for 4 months. I was a kid and didn't know cars, and something major was wrong that I don't remember, but I couldn't afford to fix it. Something like $4 grand to repair. I couldn't afford it and was leaving the country for a while anyway. The mechanic said I could just leave it there and they would just deal with it or scrap it if I didn't care. Cool. I no longer have a car, but I'm leaving anyway, so who cares? I paid the bill for the work they did and left. When I got home from my many months abroad, I went through a massive stack of mail that included one letter saying the car had been impounded, another that it had been auctioned off, and after the auction date, several parking tickets that amounted to about $400. I called the city and asked how I could be liable for parking tickets after the car was auctioned to a new owner. They said it was still in my name. The new owner hadn't changed the title, it was my responsibility. I was furious, but what could I do? The title was in my name, and they couldn't give me the name of the person who bought it. I had to pay for it or it would be sent to collections. So I'm walking to my friend's apartment a block away from my old place, and right across the street from her building I see my car. I still have keys, so I go home and frantically grab them and go back. I get into the car and start pulling through all the papers from the glove box and sort through them looking for the new owner's name. Just then 2 guys run up screaming that I'm in their car and what the fuck do I think I'm doing? I say, you bought it from an auction and didn't change the title. You owe me $400 for the parking tickets in my name. They insist they don't owe me shit. Not my fault you left it in your name. I smile and calmly start the engine and say, okay then. It's in my name. It's legally mine. And drive away. Thanks for repairing the engine. For clarification, I was young and naive. I couldn't afford to have the car towed outside the city, to the house of friends or family. Remember, I was leaving the country for 4 months. There was nowhere off the street in the city to leave it, let alone have it repaired. The mechanic was kind and said he would take it off my hands, which was a relief. But remember the young and naive thing? Yeah, I handed him the title and thought that was all I had to do. The mechanic apparently pushed the car onto the street from where it was impounded. It was then auctioned off by the city. The city gave the title to the new owner. The parking tickets were racked up by the new owner. There were dates on all this paperwork that was mailed to me. I did try to fight the tickets, had a copy of the bill of sale from the auction, but they still said there was nothing they could do because the buyer didn't transfer the title into their name. Back and forth to new government agencies, all the while new tickets were being issued. I was pissed the city didn't have to transfer the title out of my name when they claimed possession of it, but sold it and gave the buyer the title, the same one I handed the mechanic. So it was late last night when I recalled this story and decided to share it, but here's a bit I left out. When I got into the car and checked the paperwork in the glove box, I found the title, still in my name. They had not even signed it. Also in the glove box was their bill of sale from the auction. They were clearly young and naive too. What happened after, you might be wondering? Never heard from them again. I had the car for another year or two, put new tires on it, and sold it properly before another trip abroad. And you better believe I had them sign the title in front of me, and I filed the sale with the DMV that day, giving them, I think, a week to file or be fined. 2. I'm a paramedic, and lately I've been working at an isolation facility in the Canadian oil field. And it's just terrible. It brings out the worst in a lot of people, kind of understandable. And once COVID is over, you could give me the choice between going back to this job or living with my dick inside an anthill for the rest of my life. And I would be slathering my loins in honey before you finish that sentence. How it works is we have a lot of large oil facilities in the area, and spring is when they shut them down. Bring in hordes of workers from coast to coast and perform maintenance as quickly as possible to get that sweet black gold flowing again. It was pretty much universally ignored how fucking bad an idea that would be this year, and you'd never guess what resulted. A big old dumpster fire. An increase in cases was planned for. One entire work camp that could accommodate 1,110 was set aside for positive or symptomatic patients, and a few wings at another camp for about 200 people where we kept asymptomatic close contact cases, no symptoms or confirmed COVID. The oil companies paid the hospitality bill, and the workers that couldn't isolate at home had somewhere to stay. For anyone trying to picture a work camp, it's less gulag and more Motel 6. Private bathroom, single or double-sized bed, TV, Wi-Fi, etc. Just picture a mediocre hotel, but a little smaller room size. 3 square meals a day, cooked in the kitchen and dining hall that's usually served buffet style, but delivered to isolation rooms by medical staff because the kitchen staff's union rightly said, hell no. The only thing that sucks about this camp is being isolated and monitored. I don't make the rules, and I don't even technically enforce them. I just tell people that the government has made a law and why it's inadvisable to break them, or in other words, fuck around and find out. People were free to leave at will, but they'd face serious legal issues. It wasn't a prison, and I didn't make the regulations. 14 full days in isolation was the mandate, and yes, it was inconvenient for everyone so required. I ended up at the smaller site, where we didn't store active cases, thankfully not because of the risk, but the 1,100-person facility being the dumping ground was filling up fast, and manpower was stretched to the breaking point. Our duties were mostly very non-MES related: drop off food, deliver booze, invade feces with COVID swabs, vitals, check people in, chaperone smoke breaks, and miscellaneous concierge things. My coworkers and I made efforts for our patients because it really is a stressful and shit situation for them. Most people were pretty chill, if not outright pleasant towards us, but unfortunately, we had a sizable group of loud, mean-spirited, entitled, and belligerent man-children. These enormous assholes complained about everything from the government to the quality of the steaks they weren't paying for, and also serenaded us with threats, profanity, Nazi death camp comparisons, general prickishness, QAnon-level conspiracies, anti-vaccine garbage, and angry yet vague tirades about their rights. This kind of hot garbage isn't uncommon for this province. We're basically Canada's Florida Panhandle, and come complete with all the lunatics and tomfoolery. This is not a work environment I greatly enjoyed, but I did have a moment of catharsis when I clapped back at our standout problem child. Mr. P, as I'll call him, was that rare 1 in a billion asshole, a repugnant narcissist, and cheap as a marble. His Medal of Honor citation includes the following highlights: hurling his lunch at the wall opposite his room door because he didn't like tuna, threats against other patients and one staff member, staggering out of his room to pass out in the hallway, wrecked on rum and near buck naked, perving on female staff members, smoking constantly in his room with his door open, turning it up to 11 while watching porn, screaming at an adjacent parking lot from his window while trashed at 9 a.m., sneaking out the back while unescorted whenever he felt like it, and to meet a delivery driver after we took his booze away, all while breaking quarantine. Hilariously, and obviously trying to forge the date on his information sheet taped to his door so he'd be out sooner. We track it all in Excel. Being himself. All this was a 72-hour period, and we literally couldn't kick him out. Where else would he go? He was under quarantine. An amazing amount of forgiveness was extended to him by the camp operator and the oil company because of the stress being quarantined. Eventually, Mr. P gets a visit and talking to by the RCMP. Call from his boss and the camp manager, all of which seemed to have made an impact. All parties were thoroughly fed up with his shit, and though he wouldn't be evicted, he would be if he carried on, facing a ban for life from every site owned by the oil co, fired from his job and fined by the police. With his booze confiscated, I assume he might behave closer to the 55-year-old man he is, but turns out that was naive. I interacted with him more than anyone else. I bit that bullet because I'm the veteran, the most jaded, and also for some reason he didn't sexually harass me. Unhappy with being unable to smoke in his room or wander around breaking quarantine as he chose, he picked me to use as his grievance tampon. Every day we had 8 15-minute breaks scheduled to take people to smoke or just to get outside. As a chaperone, we would ensure no patients would touch door handles. We'd politely remind them about distance and not to pass out smokes to others. Mr. P didn't like the schedule. Demanded, not asked, for more breaks. Longer breaks and breaks at the times he wanted. We'd honor some requests for favors, usually, perhaps take a worker or a couple of extra breaks during the odd favor. Never bothered me for normal patients, but in his case, I would rather lick a cheese grater than expend 1 extra calorie for his comfort. My response to his whining was a hard no and no negotiation. He would follow the schedule or risk his job by smoking in his room again. He wasn't special, and we were just staffed enough to handle our workload already. I might have done him a solid if he promised me he would use that time to go play in the highway traffic. He grabbed my attention when I was handing out some lunches. This is when the above request was gleefully denied. It was about an hour later when we got a call from Mr. P. He wasn't feeling good and needed a checkup. I grabbed my kits and monitor thinking I had paramedic shit to do, but not believing I'd be lucky enough to have him actually be dying. He opens the door complaining of a cough and sore, dry throat. He put on the full act and I did my due diligence for funsies, took vitals and notes, then piped up with some conspicuously prepared lines.
"Oh, isn't it just stuffy in here? I don't think I need any medicine, just some air. Extra fresh air would probably clear this up."
Yada yada. His brain must be smooth enough to skip across a pond if he put faith in this cartoonish scheme. I just imagine his inner dialogue.
"I'll just fake sick to get the thing he just refused to give me an hour ago. No one will suspect a thing."
Well, thank you for reporting your development of symptoms. If you could have your bags packed in the next hour, a vehicle will be arriving to take you to the other facility. Baffled, his master plan crumbled instantly. He made a futile effort to backtrack. Was he lying? Extremely likely, just his bad luck I take my patients at their word. I reported it, recorded it, and sent it up the ladder to my superiors immediately. No backsies, asshat. We ship out symptomatic and positive cases, and that made him someone else's problem. Already a win. The other place is also much worse between the huge and unexpected inflow of cases, staff shortage, staff being overwhelmed. They get maybe 1 or 2 smoke breaks a day. Food is worse, later arrives cold, rooms are smaller, and with all positive cases, their security is increased. Sucks, I feel for the guys there, all except him. Oh, and because he developed symptoms, his quarantine days were reset from 7 to 14. Motherfucker talked himself into another week of legally mandated isolation. 3. This happened when I was applying for a master's degree abroad. I had graduated with my bachelor's degree in my country. It was a very general degree where you touched a bit of every area, with more subjects related to the core topics of your choice. Think like a BA in STEM, where you study mathematics, computer science, physics, etc., and then you choose informatics and physics as main subjects. For simplicity's sake, let's stretch this comparison for the rest of the post. Ever since my first year, I realized my passion laid in the section Information Technology of the broader CS field, and I took all subjects I could on that specific elective. When I finished my BA, I wanted to apply for a specific MA in another country. This was an interdisciplinary MA with subjects from information technology and subjects from a completely different field, economy. Since it is quite specialized, they accepted BA graduates from both fields, as long as they proved 2/3 of their BA curriculum had either information technology or economy-related subjects. Well, great. I checked my transcript, and it seemed as if I could qualify, except that most of my information technology subjects were under the broader field name. I literally had one subject named Information Technology. All the rest were Introduction to Computer Science 1, Computer Science 2, and there it goes until the end. I messaged the person of contact and asked them what to do. They answered back that I should send them the official explanation of my degree, which does not work because, as I said, it is so broad it sounds like you just had a subject of each topic and moved on. They answer me to send the official module handbook, which every university in that country has. But in my country, university courses are not grouped into official modules, and such a thing does not exist. So I tell them that I guess they were getting tired of me as they just answered to, "Just send an official subject summary." They were very clear that whatever I send had to be the official from uni. They encouraged me to explain a bit about my BA's degree in the motivational letter. But, understandably, no personal statement could be considered proof of qualifying to enter the MA. No official subject summary existed or was expedited for my degree, so I told them, but further messages went unanswered. So I did just what they asked for. I went to my university's webpage of the previous years and downloaded all of the subject descriptions of every information technology-related subject I ever took. They were quite lengthy since they included much less metadata and most were just barely descriptive to justify what the focus was. In my country, you take a lot of small subjects for little credit, so there were a lot of subject descriptions to add. In addition, I studied a year abroad, so I added the transcript of the stay abroad and the module handbooks of the BA degrees, where the subjects that I studied abroad were included, which were quite a few, considering I had to take subjects from many different departments back then. The PDF merged document had a total of 105 sweet pages with all this information. I attached them to my application with zero remorse. The funny thing is, I received my acceptance letter less than a week after I applied, and it was a pretty competitive MA. So while I doubt they read the 105 pages attached, maybe the effort snatched me some extra points. So this happened in the early 2000s. I had a chance meeting with an old friend who reminded me of the story. Just for clarification's sake, I had an accident which left me with a long road to recover personal mobility. At the time, I lived in a third-story Victorian-era apartment, so I bought a ranch-style house that was better suited to my recovery. The house was a 3-bed, 2.5-bath detached garage, and by my opinion a rather ugly shade of yellow. My girlfriend at the time took the opportunity to move in with me. Beyond family, I had 2 regular visitors, a personal trainer and an aide. So for argument's sake, I can't say that everything leading up to the malicious compliance was brought on by one single neighbor, but at this very least, if I had a fire, she was pouring gasoline on it. I quite quickly met 2 of my neighbors upon moving in. They couldn't be any more opposite if they tried. One neighbor, Al, an old biker whom everyone should have a neighbor like at least once in their lives, and the other, Wilma, nosy neighbor extraordinaire. The rest of the neighborhood was a great blend of ages, ethnicities, families, and whatnot. Just good people doing the best they could. Things started off on the wrong foot, more appropriately wheel with Wilma. Right off the bat, she made it clear that she was the type of person to really inspect anything you did to your house. She did not mind telling you if something wasn't up to her standards, which included my '69 Chevy truck she clearly thought was ugly. Note, throughout this story I was not able to drive it as I was mostly wheelchair-bound. However, I kept it registered and ready. Though for some reason Wilma loved my girlfriend and would talk at length to her. My girlfriend did not share the same feelings for Wilma. Al, on the other hand, being a gearhead, quickly decided that I was his new best friend. Looking back, I'm glad Al was there. I'm not sure I ever told him, but he definitely had a way to pick me up even on my worst days. Anyways, problems mounted fairly quickly. I hired a contractor to make some modifications to the house, and we were nearly constantly hit with inspections and stop work orders. It was clear that someone was complaining, and more often than not, Wilma seemed to be in the know about what the inspection was for. I remember one day my contractor calling the police because she was constantly on site and butting in. After that day, she'd stand on the sidewalk watching everything. Shortly after construction ended, came rumors that I was cheating on my girlfriend. Nikki, my aide, was by most accounts a very attractive woman, but I wasn't her type. To be blunt, no guy was. Then came the rumors that I was having a gay affair. To be frank, I don't know who or what buff Biff, my trainer, physical therapy guy, was into. I do know he enjoyed bending me into a pretzel and telling me that I wasn't trying hard enough. Nice guy outside that. Of course, the gay rumors spurred the local church flyers and occasional visits to attempt to save me. Nikki tried to put on a good face, but she was clearly bothered by it, and that pissed us all off. Come one day, Al had had enough, and confronted the church member as they were walking up to the house. It wasn't anything physical, but it was loud enough with open windows to hear Al and let them know he had had enough. Wilma called the cops, but at least that harassment stopped. From that day on, it seems like I had either the city or police knocking on my door all the time. If Al took me for a ride in my pickup, cops were called. If my truck wasn't parked by whoever I let drive it in my garage at night, city was called. If my grass was a slight shaggy, city was called. If I was in my garage and dropped a wrench after 10 p.m., cops were called. If we have friends over and we were boisterous after dark, cops were called. Nikki's fiancé came over and planted some flowers for me. She was a sweetheart like that. Yep, city came and visited, and I had to have my yard rearranged. So much for low-maintenance yard. All the while, somehow Wilma seemed to know everything about what was going on. One evening we had a bad storm. In the storm, a large branch fell off the oak in my yard and ripped over several rows of siding. Sure enough, city came knocking as my contractor was cleaning up the branches. I ended up with a notice to repair the siding on the house or face penalties. Now, we couldn't get the same siding, and to be honest, I was a bit excited to get rid of the ugly yellow, at least on the front of the house. My contractor made some emergency patches to the siding while we were supposed to decide what to do. Of course, this brought Wilma out, who informed us that the city code required a uniform appearance of the house, and Wilma was not a fan of my stating that I was thinking the house would look good in a tan color. She was trying to steer me back to yellow, because my second choice, white, would have been too many white houses in a row, in her opinion. Cue malicious compliance. I confirmed with the city that yes, the house had to have a uniform appearance, which meant that I would have to at least paint the rest of the house to match the front. And that was really the only restrictions. Somehow during this time I had found out that Wilma absolutely hated the color fuchsia. So I proceeded to tell my contractor to paint the house fuchsia. It just so happened that Wilma was away the week my house was repaired and painted, so upon her return she wasted no time coming over to demand we painted it a different color. My girlfriend looked her straight in the eye and said something to the effect of, "It's such a lovely color and certainly wakes up the neighborhood." Wilma stormed off. Aftermath. That was more or less the end of our direct conversations with Wilma. She did call the city, who came out and gave us the blessing to keep the color, and she did complain about the hideous house across the street to our neighbors. The officers were also more or less done with her harassment towards us. I'm not sure what they said or if they said anything, but there was a definite reduction in visits. About a year later, Wilma suffered a heart attack, which she survived, but decided to move closer to her children. I moved out a year after that, and I found out via said friend that the house is still fuchsia. 5. I work in lunch quality for a mid-sized manufacturing company in the States. My team is basically the last step before a new product can get okay to sell, as we do all the final checks, customer documents, and regulatory sign-offs. Our last manager left just when COVID hit, as he was near 70 and decided to just retire. Took the company till October to decide to hire a new one. During this time, the salespeople stopped coming in, and because my team were some of the few office folks coming in, because we have to check the parts, they started shipping everything to us, samples, prototypes, final launch parts, paperwork, you name it. Even better, they rarely picked everything up. They may take 5 to 10 of a 25-part run, and left us with the mess. A year of this and the office was a wreck, and they didn't care as none of the mess affected their bonuses, so long as those parts got to the customer on time. New boss comes in, and he's one of 2 managers on site. Him and the production manager. Because of how the factory is laid out, our team are the only ones in the office, and so that's where he is. He questions the mess, but we say no one has cared about our concerns, so he shrugs it off. Now our boss has his faults. He's pretty tone-deaf on the resources and time it takes to finish things sometimes, because of the industry he came from, heavy automotive. His attitude is, if it takes us all 60 hours a week for the next month, we work it. The other side of that is he's here with us. He'll occasionally just tell someone their assignment is not to be there for a couple of days if things are slow, and he has our backs. MC. About 3 months ago, the company's president comes in for the first time in a year. He is pissed about the state of the office. As our boss is the only manager around, he reams him up one side and down the other for the state of things. Despite the new boss only being there for about 6 months and all this predating him. Tells him to just figure it out, but I want this office clean and professional. Boss comes to me and says, "Write me a policy and process for shipping material to the office, storage and disposal of things, that shit. Have the draft by the end of the week, and I'll get you a budget and some factory folks if you need to buy anything, move, or install anything." So I write one that's pretty easy and straightforward. Basically what we had already been doing, but more organized. Shelves, ID locations, incoming and outgoing. Boss looks at it and makes 2 comments. "We're not inventory clerks. Sales gets the ID of the shipment, and unless they get me or the production manager's approval, it's their problem. 2, we don't have that much space. Add a clause we will throw out anything over a week old every Friday." Then he got me 2 maintenance people and told purchasing I had to put some orders in. Then he sent the policy to the president. President said to do it. 3 weeks later, the office is pristine. President has his chest puffed out next time he comes through. Then last month it happens. We all knew sales wasn't going to pay attention to our policy, even though my boss personally met with the sales VP and the team leads. For the most part, nothing we threw out was a big deal, but then one of the team leads ships a whole prototype order to the office. I know the guy is infamous for getting other people to do his work and never follows up with anything. And if things go wrong, he throws us or production under the bus. Now this order is a big deal. High 6-figure contract with our number 3 customer. Part of a new line that could generate millions. I tell boss and he shrugs and says I should email the guy to remind him of his parts in the new policy. No response. Friday cleanup comes and boss calls the guy on his cell, voicemail. So boss puts the parts on his desk and has me send a reminder to the guy. Nothing. Monday rolls around and still no follow-up. So boss replies my email with his boss, sales VP, and president on it, saying per policy the guy had until 10 Tuesday, when trash people pick up a roll-off, to get his parts. Tuesday rolls around and he has me toss the parts and email the sales guy that I did. Things blew up on Wednesday. Sales guy calls me screaming at me for losing the parts, and there's no way to make new ones in time. Who the fuck am I to toss his parts, etc.? Boss sees my face and can probably hear the screaming from his office, and comes out to see what's going on. I managed to stammer something out, and then he got another earful from the sales guy. Boss takes the receiver from my hand, and I will never forget this. "You will never speak to my people like that again." Cue more cursing from the phone. I am hanging up now. The next call you get will be from VP Ops for a meeting time to discuss this incident. We will also discuss your unprofessional language to me. He hangs up as the next tirade starts and tells me to ignore the guy's next call. Reminds me we have a big due date coming up and hands me his credit card so I can order the team dinner and heads back to his office. About 4, he closes his door, which he only does for conference calls and HR stuff. My whole team can hear the yelling through the door, but not much detail. Around 5:25, HR sends out an email with times for mandatory training on following company policy, and another for proper workplace decorum. Boss comes out about 6, looking mostly tired, and remarks, "I will never understand why people want to fuck with the folks who make them money and write the rules. Oh, your work assignment for Friday is to be off." Then he just heads back to his office to finish our project. P.S. I never did get an apology from the sales guy, but he's been way nicer. I know the contract miss cost him a bonus. It was his only one that quarter. I think my boss took some shit assignments for the next couple of weeks, but neither me nor my team heard anything about it. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Revenge is Ice Cream. episode 87. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you enjoyed the video, then please do like, subscribe, and comment, and share the video around with all your friends and family. This video took a while to make, basically because it's so hot, it was hard to get going today. Where are we now? 6 in the morning, I think, about? Oh no, 6:30, even later than I thought. Yeah, this should have been done about 12 hours ago, so give you an idea. Well, maybe 10 hours ago, not 6 hours ago. I'll be spending the rest of Thursday recording stories and trying to keep cool. Okay, and with that, I'm gonna head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.